How was you? How was the band? How are you all doing?
We are doing really well. We are actually doing better than we thought we would be doing after the comeback. That's the whole reason why we wanted to do the EP.
Yeah,
Because once we were done with the touring cycle and the European tour, we just didn't want to stop. We wanted to continue making music. So yeah, we
yeah,
are doing better than usually.
that's great. That is. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. What was life like for yourself growing up? What music did you listen to, and what made you want to become a artist?
Well, I was really heavily influenced of the Finnish metal scene back in the days. Like we started to have these huge bands blowing up like Amorphis, Bodom, Nightwish. That was during the time when I started like more seriously write music. And it wasn't just inspiring because of the quality of the music they made, but also seeing that even we are very distant from the rest of the Europe, it's not very easy for a Finnish band to make way like outside the borders of Finland.
Yeah,
And seeing those bands like selling a huge amount of albums, playing tours in North America and Europe, so that it was like also inspirational career-wise. When you actually see that the bands that you listen and bands that are from the same area that you are actually making it all around the world. So those few bands were, I think they were huge influence to most of the metal bands in Finland at the moment.
yeah,
And later on came like Insomnium. We did a lot of gigs and Finnish tours together with Insomnium and Omnium Gatherum. Right the time we all released our first albums. So there was also a very good like community thing going on in the Finnish metal scene. So, and of course, I've always loved Swedish and Norwegian black metal.
yeah.
So like bands like Dissection, Satyricon, later on Dimmu Borgir, those were quite a big influence also.
Yeah, the great bands you just named there as well. Uh, how did Before the Dawn come about?
Well, this is starting to be quite a long time ago, so I need to think a little bit. But I think it was like 98 or something like that. I was still a drummer in a local rock band. But I started playing guitar when I was 7, and that was always my main instrument, but I never found a band where to play metal. I grew up in a very small village with the population of 5,000. There was no opportunities to even be in a metal band.
Yeah,
So it took quite a long time for me to actually get into like metal music as a songwriter in the studio level. But then one friend of mine was working at the studio, and he suggested like we could do some demos if I have some ideas. We don't need to have a band or something. So that was the origin of the first Before the Dawn demo.
yeah,
And that kind of like it started kind of like accidentally. It wasn't like the regular path that you have a band and you spend certain amount of years in rehearsing together and playing shows. I had like few demos out already when I had the first lineup to do shows. So it just started mainly from the songwriting perspective.
Oh, it's one of the things. The reason why I ask these questions because every band has got a different story, and it's so fascinating to find out how some stumbled upon each other. I interviewed the band the other day, which was just a jamming session, which all became so learning, learning what each band, how they came about is so fascinating for me. That's why I ask these questions.
And I think there's so much like luck plays a huge factor. You are, and what I know about the bands that I've been touring with and I grew up with and we played shows for the past 20 years, there's a lot of luck involved that you are accidentally you find the right persons for the band. And I think it's a lot of bands like if you are able to make it, that means that you are at least some level lucky. Finding the right persons into the band that you because every band has their like bad times and hardships and obstacles, and to have the right people in the band to push through those obstacles, that's where the luck plays. It doesn't then it doesn't matter how good musician you are or what your contribution to the band. Is it like you work for the other aspects, or you write the music, or you're just a musician? But if you don't bring right parts for the chemistry inside the band, so that's bands have a lot of egos and a lot of artists, and a lot of can be complicated, like a mixture of people to get to work together. So it's most of the time it is fascinating. I thought the same quite many times, because I get to ask this question quite a lot, especially now before they don't have the 10-year gap. Between and now we came back again, and the chemistry and just accidentally or whatever you find the right people. That's annoyingly big factor.
It's like I say, it's so fascinating, and I totally understand where you're coming from with having luck. For myself, I've never done any media work prior to this. Never did any photography, bar picking up a small camera and taking photos and all that. And I've been very, very lucky to be able to do these interviews, because someone just asked, or are you able to ask some questions of this band? Not yourself, when I first started out. And I was like, yeah, I'll ask a few questions. And it just spiraled out of it. And it was the same with my photography. I asked Magnum, the rock band Magnum. I just asked them if I could come along and just take some photos, and they said yes. And like I say, it was everything from there has just spiraled, and I've been very, very lucky, very, very lucky with what
sometimes things work out better the less you plan, and just things kind of like fall from the sky. That's the now looking back on all of my bands, that been case many times. Sometimes things just need to happen on their own, and that actually brings the best result.
Yes, definitely. You in 2023, Stormbringers was released. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I listened to it today in the car when I was taking my dog to the vet. It's a brilliant album. I haven't had the chance to listen to the EP yet, although it's in my to-do list. But Stonebringer was a fantastic album. How long did it take for you to write and record the album?
Well, I usually write really, really fast. So that I think the writing of the album was less than 2 months altogether, like including all the pre-production, and then the recording took less than 2 weeks. But it's our guitar player Juho. He has been working as a professional sound engineer for over 20 years now. He recorded and mixed most of the albums we did back in the days, like between 2004 and 2012. And between this time, he's been recording and mixing albums for my other band, Wolfheart. So we've been constantly working at least one album in 2 years pace. We've been working in the studio. So doing an album with him is like, we don't even need to talk. We are like a perfect functioning team. So like the recording itself, it's super easy and fast when you already know the people, the studios, and then you don't lose any time and effort or energy for pointless stuff. You get to do the important part efficiently, and that leaves still more time for the creative work in the studio and trying things out musically. But you don't,
So, what's your process when it comes to recording? Do you go into a recording studio, or do you have your own studio? Do you file share between the rest of the band? What's your process?
I tried having my own studio for a short while, but then I did realize really quickly that I hate the whole recording process.
Yeah,
Well, and that's why I don't even nowadays, I don't do the demo versions myself. I rather go, because a lot of the studio engineers I'm using for the albums for my several bands, they are also really good friends of mine. So it's also like a social aspect. I rather hang out with them. We do the demos or we do the album recordings.
yeah,
And yeah, for me, it takes way too much focus on the playing itself.
yeah,
To play and then most of the time you are just still looking at the screen, thinking about the sound, thinking about the tuning, thinking about, I just want to focus the playing and the actual songs and the melodies and those ideas. So I always use a studio. Then again, I'm super lucky that most of my close friends are either musicians or sound engineers. So it's like I can work with super flexible schedules also, and I do the demos for each song, which I send to each guy, and they get to like learn their parts. And of
yeah,
course, it's more like a guidelines that I write for the songs, like the main arrangement that the song should follow, but
yeah,
everybody else do what they feel musically the best, because it doesn't make any sense for me to like any kind of like dictatorship in music only lessers the
yeah,
party, in my opinion.
yeah.
So
I like I say once again, I totally understand where you're coming from, because like when me and my best mate, we formed a band back in um 20, 20, 20 2004, 04, and we have been jamming all the way from school all the way through, so we knew what one another, how to play and all that. And I would write the songs, but I would be a case of like, these are the chords, this is the structure, and then he would, because he's the guitar player, I'd be the bass player, so he would then adapt
yeah.
and do what he needed to do. And so I totally understand where you're coming from. Uh, you're soon to release the EP. Right, Archie, Archie Flame.
Yeah,
Is that?
yeah. It is a tricky word. It's easier to write than pronounce.
Yeah, you have to excuse me as well. I suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder, so I've taken my medication. So prior to me taking the medication, I was like, it right. That's how you pronounce. That's how you pronounce it. Now I've taken it. My brainwave is a little bit slower.
It's totally okay.
um, it's a 4-track EP. It's got one live track on it. Dying Sun.
Yeah.
When did you decide to write for this EP, and where was the live recording? Where was it recorded?
We did the live recording in the last show of our Finnish tour last October, so it's quite fresh. And we definitely wanted to have one live song, because we did change the vocalist for the latest album, and I think that was quite a dramatic change for a lot of the fans in the beginning. So we wanted to like showcase for the people who haven't been able to see us live how we are performing the old songs, because we have quite a strong legacy from the previous time we were active. And I know that a lot of fans are not skeptical, but they are very curious to hear how are we able to pull the older songs. And we didn't really plan to write an album. We did record several gigs of the Finnish tour just in case, because nowadays people always want to have bonus songs and stuff like that. And it's super easy nowadays, because I think every sound guy has his own soundboard or console.
Yeah.
So it's just pressing 2 buttons and you get the whole gig recorded. It's not like 15 years ago, you need to have a huge amount of extra gear and stuff like that. But the decision happened during the European tour because we realized that it's way too much fun everything that is happening around the band, and we already knew that we had the 70 tons cruise coming up. We have a summer breeze for this summer, a lot of festivals in Finland for this summer. So we didn't want to stop writing music since we already stayed in slumber for 10 years.
Yeah.
And luckily Napalm was okay with the idea of having the EP out this fast after the album. Usually it doesn't make sense to push releases out this fast, but they luckily agreed, and I wrote the songs right after we came from the European tour, so it was done in early December.
That's an interesting way to bring your band, to bring your fans on board with what you just said about putting a live performance there with the new singer. I've never heard that before, but it makes so much sense that they'll get to listen to the new singer. They listen to the new tracks, so they get in both of the live side of it plus the recording side of it. That is, like I say, it makes so much sense, and it's the first time I've ever heard of anyone do it.
Yeah, we never got to tour, for example, North America.
Yeah,
back in the days, and it didn't fit to schedules now. So there's all the North American fans have never seen us live.
Yeah,
and the thing one of the reasons why that was one factor of many, but one of the reasons we decided to do the comeback was that during the 10 years between 2012 2022, like somehow, like, we didn't release any new music. We weren't active in social media. We didn't even have an Instagram account. We didn't have a TikTok account. We barely did anything in Facebook because we didn't write songs. We didn't play shows. We didn't do anything. And when I started to look more closely into the Spotify statistics, it showed that we gained over 50,000 followers during the 10 years of silence, which doesn't make any sense because that's not how music industry works. It works by pushing out a lot of music, labels putting out money, a lot of promotion, but yeah, and that means that the legacy of the band from the early 10 years, that's super important for the fans. So we knew that we need to show also for the fans that we still respect that past. It's a new version of the band, but we still keep the old legacy with us. So.
No, that's amazing. With 2024, have you got touring plans made for after the release? Is there a continuous touring from last year, if you know what I mean, or are you focusing on promotion of the EP?
We are mainly focusing on the promotion. We're gonna do festivals in the summer, but I'm also been working in the studio with my other band Wolfheart, and the whole calendar is now filled with the touring plans for Wolfheart. That's the downside of having several bands. That means certain amount of plans and schedules are colliding, and also Juho is permanent guitar player in Swallow the Sun. And they are working with new materials. So we knew already last year that this year me and Juho need to focus on other stuff. So my calendar is now full until end of December this year. So that's all Wolfheart for now. So only the festivals and the promotion for the EP. And then we see what happens next year.
Finally, are we going to see Before the Dawn or Wolfheart in the UK? either in 2024 or 2025.
Wolfheart is coming this year. I know the date, I know the venue. I'm not allowed to say anything because it's part of a bigger touring package.
Yeah.
But that's confirmed already. And before the dawn, most likely 25.
This has been an absolute blast speaking to you. Good luck with the EP. What I've listened to so far with the previous album, I'm sure is going to fly.
Thank you.
People are going to love it.
Thank you.
So, but thank you once again for your time. And like I say, good luck with the release, and hope to see you in 2024, 2025.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, take care.